out to dinner first at this weird Thai food restaurant.
We were, just really enjoying ourselves and had such a positive vibe and such a positive idea of the rest of the night.
So we left the restaurant, we're in Williamsburg, and we're just walking around. Everyone's, having a good time. We just ate good food. And then we go and we're like, oh, let's go to the water. So we walk over towards the water.
It was already pretty late when we started heading over here. And I remember it being pretty warm. Like, it was a very warm night.
When we get there, we're by a park and we see this couple and we're like, what's going on over there? Like, what's happening? And this guy was actually proposing to a woman.
And Yanni's just like beside himself. He's so happy because he loves that sort of stuff. So he starts freaking out. And he's like, she said yes. And he starts clapping.
It kind of felt like that was going to be like the big event of the night. Like, oh, we saw these people like get engaged, and it was like adorable, and they were so happy.
So there was this guy who was rapping, and we're coming up here, and he's like, it's a beautiful night. What the fuck? And so for like the majority of the time we were down here at the end of the pier, we were just like making fun of that phrase and making fun of that guy's rap, because it was a beautiful night. It was like truly beautiful.
And then we keep walking, we're talking about the proposal, and we walk down the pier. And
there wasn't really that many people out. Like, there was a few people here and there.
I just remember looking over the river and thinking, wow, how lucky are we to be living in such a wonderful city.
If nothing had happened, that's what we would have remembered. We would have remembered how much fun the night had been.
In 2 seconds, everything completely changed.
I saw this woman sort of staggering from far away.
She walked up, and you could just hear like the pounding of her feet on the pier.
I just hear like stomping and someone muttering about.
And you could pick up words as like child, love, and I can't believe you did that, and I can't believe this happened.
I remember like turning to face her, looking at her briefly, because you could hear her and you didn't know like what the sound was coming from.
I actually sort of moved out of the way to try to like ignore her, because she looked pretty like distraught.
Just like, oh, it's a crazy person, move out of the way, let them have their space to be crazy.
I wasn't really paying attention to her because she was like talking to herself and kind of loudly, and so I sort of like turned back into my group.
She was wearing like jeans and a black shirt, maybe. She was wearing a backpack.
So she didn't seem that she was coming from, the wealthiest family, or, she was wearing ripped Converses. And so to me, it just seems like she was a young person, probably trying to make it through New York.
And I like glance over again because it stopped. The sound had stopped because she had reached the edge of the pier.
And I hear people like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So then I turn to my left, and probably about, maybe 10, 15 feet away, like this woman, she just comes right up to the edge of a pier.
She throws her leg over.
I just heard people yelling like, no, no, no first, and then like I turned around and like she dived into the water.
And it happened so fast that everyone, like, there was really nothing that could have been done.
There's no time to think. Like, you think like, oh, I could have stopped that, or I could have helped in some way. But like when it was happening, there was no time to think.
And the one thing I can just remember is just feeling how heavy the wind was, and just seeing and hearing the waves, and just not having a thought in my mind.
There was sort of probably 10 seconds of just like shock, like, did I really just see that?
I remember screaming, and I remember this sinking feeling in my stomach, but that was just like a feeling I've not ever experienced, because it was kind of like it's too late.
But then like after the fact, I sort of realized that like I was standing so close to where she had jumped, like maybe if I hadn't like stepped out of her way, I could have like grabbed her and kept her from jumping in.
And you're just standing there like, what do I do? What do I do?
But then all of a sudden there's so many people over here. Everyone's here and everyone's looking, like everyone ran to the side and ran there, and they're like, come back, and they're screaming.
I just vaguely remember seeing her with a black backpack, leaning back, completely relaxed in the water.
I turn to Max and say, you call 911. And he pulls up his phone and he starts calling 911. And I think Max was probably the first person to get a hold of 911.
So I call the police, and it's a strange experience because I'm talking to someone who's, you know, however many miles away from where I am and has no connection to what's going on. I was not able to think. Like, she's like, where's your address? Where are you, sir? And I had no idea. I'm like, I'm on a pier in Williamsburg.
All of us that were on the pier that had been like just kind of completely ignoring each other, going about our everyday nights, like we're like talking to each other and like sharing information about like what she was wearing to help identify her to the police.
There was like steady currents because of the wind, and because of the boat coming by, it changed all the water currents and made the water start going crashing into the shore and into the rocks.
And I think we all just decided, and we just were standing there quietly, just like looking into the water. You couldn't see anything, and the water's dark.
And you hear the sound of helicopters sort of rushing and circling around the sky, and you see the lights just hitting the water in different locations.
And at first it starts going that way, like way over that way, but we all know that she had ended up this way, and we all know the water changed, and we were like, the people on the pier were like, she's that way, she's that way.
Then some boats came, and there were police cars and fire engines just along the water. And so it's just chaos.
As I make a left turn, I see a boat sort of going by, and I see a body that's completely wet.
And he's like, there she is, she's over there. And as soon as he said that, I turn and I see like a small little person like sitting at the bottom of the boat.
And I mean, when she was found, all those like the questions of whether you could have or should have, they all sort of become moot.
And then this just massive rock just coming off of all of our shoulders, and it just brought a smile to our face, and we were just so happy that the night would continue, knowing that this person was completely safe and into the correct hands.
Passing people who were just dining out like a block away from the pier, and we're just like so in awe that what we had just experienced was, there wasn't like any reverberations.
I would expect moments like this to be captured and someone to speak up for a person like this. And it sort of worries me to think that this happens more often than we think, and there are other people and other attempts that we don't know about.
Like, I left the pier kind of feeling older or more mature or something. Like, I'd experienced the weird and dark underbellies of our society. And like, I did feel very changed by the events of the evening. And then every time I told someone about it, I kind of felt like I had to get it off my chest a little bit. But in doing so, I was kind of altering the story, you know, to like make it more manageable and make it less of a burden on me. And that's kind of how I feel about telling the story at all.
I think it was more just a reflection on how small each life can be in the city, but how big it seems in the moment.
The community. And that's something Tasha had said to me about it, was that like the community maybe of New York like coming together, and that's what makes New Yorkers so resilient and so, I don't know, a community is because they have each other's backs.
In a city like this, like, you kind of tend to like ignore people who seem really upset, because it kind of feels like you're giving them like privacy to deal with whatever they're going through. But like, people need other people's support